Normally on this channel, when I'm talking about different YouTube New Age teachers, I'm doing it having done a little bit more research into who I'm talking about. But in this video, I'm going to be taking the opposite approach. This video is ex-New Ager reacts to more YouTube spiritual teachers. Let's talk about this. Welcome back, I'm Andy Fellows and I make videos on cult skepticism and making sense of life after New Age spirituality. If you're interested in a more grounded and skeptical approach to New Age spirituality, then why not subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Before we get started, I just want to quickly say if you enjoy this video today and you want to help support the channel, then the absolute best way to do that is through Patreon. There's a link to my Patreon in the description below. If you are the kind of person who wants to support a channel like this, then please go ahead, check out the tiers and see which one's right for you. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So this is part 2 of me reacting to New Age YouTube spiritual teachers, but yeah, you don't have to watch them in any particular order. It's just I had so many different suggestions of things to respond to, so I thought let's just do a couple of videos. So I should say quickly that I haven't seen any of these videos, just like in the last video. My wife has collected these videos for me from your suggestions so that I can go through them having never seen them before. So what you're seeing today is 100% just my reaction to them. I want to be really clear here as we're going through this video that I'm not taking one at anybody, I'm not attacking anybody, I'm not really criticizing anybody as a person as much as I am taking what they're saying and looking at what they're saying in the context of, you know, the kind of person they seem to be and the kind of video that they're putting out. So first up today, RUPERT SPIRA. Let's see what Rupert's got to say.
Imagine infinite consciousness as a vast space, and imagine that each of our minds are localizations of consciousness in that space, made of the space of consciousness.
Okay. Just straight out of the gate here with RUPERT SPIRA, we've got just the regular kind of New Age twaddle, right? Some vague metaphor that, you know, I'm sure he's going somewhere with it and we'll get there in a second. What he's saying here is an answer to a question from someone in the audience.
What happens when we make decisions without relying upon the rationality or conditioning of our minds, but we simply know what to do in a certain moment or circumstances?
Okay.
I think if you don't let your rationality get in the way of your decision-making process, you're probably going to make some stupid decisions and maybe your life's going to fall to pieces. What I love is that when she's getting to the end of this question, he's just like, okay. Like he's ready to answer. So he's got his answer in his head, like he knows what's going to happen, or at least he understands the question. And then he takes quite a long pause to, like, I don't know, get in the zone or whatever. And then he just says nothing. Like his answer is just empty. Okay, so I know he's setting the vibe and everything, and let's not forget that New Age spirituality is the church of vibes. But yeah, it's just get to the point, Rupert. Get to the point.
If infinite consciousness were a piece of paper, each of our minds would be a circle that you draw on that piece of paper. That all that exists inside the paper is the white paper, but it seems to be bound or limited by the circle that you have drawn.
That's like 2 whole minutes of creating an image of a circle with dots in it on a white page. Is anybody else wondering if he's actually got a point?
The content of our inner experience consists of the content that exists inside the piece of the circle that you have drawn. So all the little, imagine that inside your circle you have lots of little dots. That's your internal experience, your thoughts, your feelings, your memories.
And there shall be a great confusion as to where things really are, and nobody will really know where lieth those little things with a sort of raffia work base that has an attachment.
But every now and then you have a thought, an intuition that does not seem to be informed by the content of your circle. It comes from content that exists in consciousness but outside your circle.
Here's the thing that always bothers me with New Age stuff, right? What he's just said there is no way in hell of knowing whether that's true or not. Absolutely zero way of testing that. And yet he is stating that as if he knows it for certain to be true. Now, if he was sitting there going, I believe when I have these thoughts that don't seem to be representative of the normal kinds of thoughts I have, or they don't seem to be based on anything that I normally think or is going on or whatever, I believe they are coming from source consciousness or whatever, then okay, that's your belief and you're sharing that, and if someone else agrees or sees that there's something to that, fair enough. But sitting there on stage, first of all, we don't really know what this room looks like. It could just be him and this woman, like, let's be honest. But the way it's set up is as if he is talking to people in front of an audience, right? So again, it's like, it is implied that he is an authority in the setting that he's created there. It's like he's doing a workshop, and this may be a sample from a workshop. So he's saying these things without any qualifiers, without anything that makes it clear that what he's saying is purely conjecture, purely like it's come from his own head, right? Or maybe he's read it somewhere, or he's got it off of someone else. But there's nothing here to make it clear that what he's saying is just what he thinks. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, by the way. If you're enjoying this video, please hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell thing as well. There's an inherent belittling of rationality in these kinds of dialogues. And what that does is it closes down thought processes which lead you to interrogate the integrity and the authority of individuals like this. And I think it's really, really important that when someone's sitting there like this and they're speaking as if they know what they're talking about, people who are listening to that ask themselves some important questions, right? Asking, how does he know this is true? And if the way that he knows this is true is through his own subjective experience, then is that a reliable source of information? And why is it that Rupert knows what he's talking about with this stuff and some random in the street doesn't know what they're talking about? What is it that he's got that they don't have? Is it just the appearance of someone who knows what they're talking about? Is it just the ability to charismatically present ideas in such a way that if you're not thinking about them too much, they sound true?
So now imagine that instead of drawing your circle with a solid line, you draw it with a perforated line, because our minds are not sealed containers. They are just localizations of consciousness in consciousness. There's no real sealed container around the mind.
Something that really strikes me here with Rupert, just watching the way that he talks, the way that he moves, and he talks and he repeats his points several times in a slightly different way, and he smiles and he gets that little bit of rapport built with the person he's talking to. That's quite hypnotic. That pulls you in, that keeps you hanging on for the next word, right? Ultimately, even though he's doing all of that, he's conveyed perhaps 1 or 2 sentences of information, and the rest of it is fluff, which is sort of charismatic, alluring, sort of making the people that are hearing this feel like what he's saying is something profound, when actually it's not. It's a vibe thing. It's a charisma thing. But he's not really saying very much at all. Anyway, let's move on. Melody Fletcher.
Let's talk about the coronavirus. What the hell is going on? Why would we manifest this crap? And are we going to be okay?
You assume we've manifested it, Melody, and that may be your first mistake.
I'm Melody Fletcher, and I explain the law of attraction and the technology of reality in a way that actually makes some freaking sense.
I really hope that she's about to make some freaking sense. It may be the case that she isn't. The technology of reality is an interesting turn of phrase. I'm curious, very curious. And I love that she's a law of attraction / ascension coach as well. That's fascinating. I wonder how many people she's helped ascend, and I wonder what that actually looks like in a way that makes frickin' sense.
And today I want to talk to you about the coronavirus or COVID-19 crisis. What is it? Why is this happening? And most importantly, what can you do to keep yourself safe?
I really hope that she's about to say by following government guidelines and being slightly more cautious than the authorities in your area and or your national government are suggesting you should be.
Now, if this is the first time that you're watching one of my videos, let me just set the stage. This message is for those who at least resonate with the idea of the law of attraction and that you create your own reality, which means that you're interested in this topic and the idea of it feels good to you.
If that isn't setting the stage in New Age circles, I don't know what is.
You're looking for a technical, energy-focused explanation of what's going on and a better feeling, love-based perspective. You can get the fear-based perspective pretty much everywhere else, so we won't be covering that. Thank you very much. If all of that sounds good to you, then you're in the right place.
Melody Fletcher's got a really interesting vibe. I feel like she's come from the network marketing sort of entrepreneurial world. The way she talks really feels like that. But once again, we've come face to face with the inescapable false dichotomy of love versus fear. What's quite interesting for me here is that, normally when you get this sort of love versus fear false dichotomy from people like Ralph Smart and other people like that, what doesn't show up quite as much is that sort of very fragile, let's just stay positive, let's just stay positive, let's just stay positive, please be positive. That kind of a terrified of fear, like the fear of fear, and the fragile, like emotionally fragile need for everything to just be positive, please, otherwise I can't handle it kind of a vibe, right? That doesn't come across quite as much with someone like Ralph Smart, but watching Melody here, for me, that does come across a little bit more with Melody.
I'm going to be answering 3 big questions in this video. Why or how did we manifest the situation? What can we do during this crisis to not only feel better, but actually benefit from the whole thing? And how is this whole situation serving us?
Now, I'm not going to go through this whole video for Melody because it is really fucking long and I'm probably going to be pulling my hair out by the end of it. What is really interesting, just from what we've watched there, especially in that last bit, you can really see how there's a focus on like shifting the narrative, like reframing reality so that you can see it as though it serves you, as though it makes you feel like everything's fine, everything's okay. While I can understand the desire to reframe things, and while I can absolutely understand the desire to look at this situation and find, you know, the silver lining, find the positives, and, you know, I think we all need to be doing that to manage from time to time, because, you know, the pandemic being what it has been is tough. It is difficult, but to an extent, sometimes, especially with something like this pandemic, you've got to kind of go, this is shit for everyone, and we're doing our best. We're doing our best here. After that, if necessary, is a conversation about how can we make this work for us? How can we benefit from this? The trouble is, the further you get into a conversation about how this pandemic of global proportions has killed so many people, the further you get into that a conversation about how that is good, the more insensitive you get, the more detached from reality you get, the more you have to stick your head into the sand about how genuinely horrendous this is for so many people. It is very much this kind of COVID is here to teach us a lesson, which is what they do with anything bad, isn't it? And okay, I understand, as I said, the value of learning from things that are happening. If the time you make a video on COVID, and this is your moment to like say your thing on COVID, if the thing that you have to say is that it's good for us, you've lost the plot, I'm afraid. By the way, if you're enjoying this video as we're going through it, please hit the like button. Now, this next one, I'm not sure if it is supposed to be so or significant other as like an abbreviated thing. So I'm just going to go with the funnier of the two, spiritual significant other. So the next one I'm looking at is spiritual significant other.
Spiritual soul in the building, geyser. Nature soul in the building, man. Simple. The reason why I keep looking this way, because it's a hell of people walking up towards my shit right now. Geyser.
I'm getting a Ralph Smart vibe from the catchphrases, and apparently it's spiritual so, not spiritual significant other. So spiritual so in this video doesn't seem to be, you know, focusing too much on the spiritual stuff. He seems to be talking sort of more broadly about American politics and his day-to-day life and his sort of grievances within that. But one thing he did say that I actually do agree with is, you know, if a spiritual teacher's coming in and they're all love and light, then they are probably just telling you what you want to hear. Yeah, pretty much agree with that.
Never trust a person that's call themselves a teacher or woke or spiritual that get nothing but love, because they telling you everything that you want to hear instead of what you actually really 100% need to know.
But that doesn't rule out spiritual teachers that position themselves as sort of like a tough love guru kind of a character who are just gonna, you know, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna give it to you like it is. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I'm not gonna sugarcoat things for you. You know, I see that kind of thing from like Teal Swan. You know, just because a teacher isn't all love and light, you know, doesn't mean that they're not saying bullshit. It doesn't mean that they're not, you know, trying to influence you or take advantage of you, you know.
Look at my channel. Look at all the fucking hate I get. Look at it. It's love. It's balanced. I don't hold nothing fucking back, bruh. This shit is true.
Watching that just there, it kind of makes me think that the kind of angle that I just described of, you know, I'm a tough love guru kind of thing, I'm going to tell it to you like it is, that may be what we're getting from Spiritual So here. Now, he's talking about getting quite a lot of hate in his comments and stuff, and, you know, he's not alone there. I've got my fair share of hate in the comments, you know. And this is just my first impression of him. I haven't seen any of his channel other than just this clip. But I don't know whether the fact that he's coming across really aggressive here is part of that hate, because I know that with New Agers, they are very much sort of a soft bunch, aren't they? They're very, and I get that, what he's saying there, that's not realistic, but it's possible this is an overcorrection. If this is supposed to be like, the other way to do things, I would say this is a bit of an overcorrection. You can be real without being aggressive, and you can be spiritual without being all, love and light, namaste, there's a balance. But I'll leave that to spiritual people to deal with. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Lorry Lad, which may be said Lorry Lad, which to me sounds like a guy in his 50s, maybe called Steve, who just owns a lot of lorries. 5 Eddie Stobarts in a parking lot somewhere. And he's just like, wants everybody to know that he owns 5 Eddie Stobart lorries. He's Lorry Lad 72.
We are going through a massive emotional purging right now. A lot of you may be suffering or struggling, feeling like it's worse than it's ever been, or how am I going to get through this?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's so true. That's definitely so true. Assuming that this has come out in the pandemic and that it applies to like the situation of like lockdown and how difficult it's been for people and stuff, I'm going to say that this is just a list of the most obvious statements. So obviously this is difficult. Obviously there's emotional purging, right? Okay. Yeah. Also, Barnum statements, because who's going to hear that and say, well, no, probably not. Unless you are having the best time of your life at the moment, which I would say is probably few and far between, unless you're Melody Fletcher. I think that's fairly obvious that that's just going to be the case. Try harder, Lorry Lad. Try harder, Steve from Sheffield.
My guides have been showing me a lot of pain, emotional pain, or sadness, depression. So I'm speaking to those of you that are feeling it right now.
Right. First and foremost, believe what you want to believe, but I'm not always sure how people can be so certain that this is their guides. How does she know that this is her guides and not just herself imagining things? It is always surprising to me what possesses a person to say that their guides have shown them something, and then they're confident enough in that to then go onto the internet. But, we've all been there, let's be fair.
I want to remind you that you're not alone. And I want to remind you that this is part of the process of evolving, that you're evolving. You meaning your human experience, your human journey, your human body.
I don't believe that smile for a second. It doesn't feel like a real smile. It feels like a weird kind of patronizing Charis Melina Brown moment. But also, what's interesting in what she's saying there is she's talking about evolving. This is you evolving, right? It is always fascinating to me to hear about New Agers talking about evolution. When I was a New Ager, I sort of had one foot into genuinely believing in the ancient aliens idea. That aside, the idea of evolution here seems to imply that things are improving, that things are going to get better, that this is a process of improvement. But actually, evolution isn't a process of improvement, it's a process of adaptation. If you're going through something difficult and somebody says to you, I just want to assure you that you're evolving, effectively what that translates to is, well, I just want to reassure you that you're adapting to your circumstances so that you can better survive given the situation. The idea of evolution here seems to have been hijacked and sort of spliced into this idea of ascension and the insistence that change equals progress under these circumstances. You could say it's a good thing because you're adapting to the circumstances, but in terms of emotional health, emotional well-being, adapting to a unhealthy situation isn't necessarily a good thing, even if it helps you survive in the short term. In the long term, that's not necessarily a good thing, right? So I don't think that telling somebody that, don't worry, you're just evolving when things are really, really bad is necessarily a good thing. Again, you could be thinking of evolution in like Pokemon terms, in which case you're just evolving to become a slightly more grotesque version of what you just were. Moving away from cuteness into I fuck you up.
And none of it is you. None of it is you. When we start stepping out of the illusion that we are emotions, the illusion that we are thoughts, the illusion that we are beliefs, the illusion that we are our behaviors, when we start to step out of that, it is a really uncomfortable growth spurt.
If you're not your emotions and your thoughts and all of this stuff, who or what is growing? How do you chart that growth if you are not your emotions and all the rest of it? How is that something you can measure? What are the signs of that growth? What is the measurement by which you're judging this growth? Also, how can you be sure that you are growing? Because in theory, the idea, the belief that you're growing is something that you are not, and that is thus an illusion based on this logic. So the idea that when you overcome all of this, or when you realize that all of this is an illusion, results in an uncomfortable growth spurt, the question is, uncomfortable for who? You know, where's this pain located? Who's experiencing this pain? And what is growing? How are they growing? And if all of that is what it seems like it is, a belief, who holds that belief? Of course, I can imagine that a response to this might be, well, it's not a belief, it's the truth. Who knows that that's the truth? And how do you know that that's the truth? All of this stuff starts to become very flimsy when you really examine it. And a lot of what she's saying here, to me, looks pretty flimsy. It doesn't need to be understandable. It just needs to make you feel good, right? That's the way that a lot of this New Age stuff seems to work. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to understand it. And in a way, if you could understand it, once you do, it loses its potency, because it starts to just be the way you think, the way you approach things. What it needs to be in order for it to be in any way worthwhile to the average spiritual seeker, and I include myself in the past in this as well, is difficult to grasp and awe-inspiring. Something that makes you feel good while making you feel better than everybody else. That is the way that this seems to work. And maybe it making you feel better than everybody else doesn't come initially, but that's just like the consequence of thinking you know this kind of stuff, thinking that this sort of stuff is true and that you are one of the very few people that knows this. It does go to your head, right?
Because we haven't been yet free. We haven't been sovereign. We haven't been released from the illusion that we are everything other than what we are right here, which is consciousness, which is light, which is love.
I'm suspicious of her use of the word consciousness here. I wonder how she's defining consciousness in a way that it makes sense to put it next to the words light and love. I know, again, in New Age sort of circles, these are sort of buzzwords. They don't really mean anything. They just sort of convey a feeling. They convey a vibe. Overall, what I'm getting from Laurie Ladd is that, you know, this is marginally contentless, soothing, ego-stroking content. And in it being ego-stroking, I think it's stroking the ego of the viewer and comforting them while also stroking the ego of Laurie Ladd, from what I'm seeing here. Right, next one. The PELE report.
Ho, ho, ho! How often do you see 3 banana babies in one shot? Woo! And number 4 is over there. I tell you, they take so long to get ripe. It's like takes 4 months or something.
I would be very, very, very surprised if he wasn't high as fuck.
I'm a little laid back today, a little spaced out, a little, unmotivated, but I can look at the camera and talk for a little while, I guess.
Off his ever-loving titties, I tell you. As someone who used to smoke, I swear down, this guy is fucked.
There's so much going on out there. It's like when I wake up, I kind of, start looking at what's going on out there, and it's, kind of takes me out of my personal inner journey and my personal evolution and my personal life and my personal relationships, because there's so much going on out there.
I just love it. This guy, it's like the first few seconds of that clip is like listening to Trump talk. It's like incoherent sort of babble, and then it starts to become clear what he means, which is that there's an out there and that it's distracting him from his own spiritual evolution, which, we've just talked about that. And then he's out there, and it's like he takes way too long to do this.
Out there.
Just like 4 times. Out there.
Okay, the new moon coming up is like super freaking intense next week, okay? The moon is going to be conjunct the sun and Pluto, and we're in kind of I feel like it's the final push.
Right. If anyone knows anything about the PELE report guy, please tell me, is he a Trump supporter? Because something about the way he's talking makes me think of Trump. It could just be a coincidence, and it may well be. But please tell me if you know, is he a Trump supporter? Let me know, and I'd be fascinated to know if he's also, sort of into conspirituality as well. If he's sort of a QAnon MAGA person too, that would be very interesting.
If it's a birth, it's like, okay, we're crowning, and the doctor, or the midwife says, Come on, give it that one big final push. We're in the one big final push, man.
The glorious return of the YouTube spiritual teacher uncomfortable laugh. Why do they always do weird laughs at the weirdest times? Why is that so common with these people? So strange, so uncomfortable. Also, when he was doing this, I half expected him to start going, can you imagine that? Can you imagine if Trump impersonator became a job after this? Like, we've got one, we don't need more. One is enough.
Big final push, man. Moon going into Scorpio, right? Scorpio is birth and death.
Okay, I've changed my hypothesis from out of his mind stoned to going through a crisis. And especially when he says birth and death and he goes, it's like, mate, are you all right? Are you okay? I almost feel bad criticizing him. Like, I worry that he can't handle it today. Wow. I hope he's okay. Also, just want to point out, he said nothing at all yet, other than the vague new agey, we're going through an awakening, this is an evolution, things are changing kind of, which is just all they always say. That's like, nothing there is new at this point. Nothing that he's said here so far is different from anything that we've seen from any of the other people in this video necessarily, apart from Spiritual So, who, you know, he's doing his own thing over there, you know. It's just the same kind of thing that you always hear. This is nothing new, nothing vaguely noteworthy even. Except he's doing it through astrology, whereas Melody Fletcher's doing it through a lack of empathy, and, you know, Laurie Ladd is doing it because her guides have told her. Why is it all these spiritual people seem to have such a weird, impersonal, almost inhuman way of carrying themselves? They seem so weirdly uptight and yet super patronizing and like condescending, you know? The vibe that they always put out is supposed to be like, you know, choose love and not fear and stuff, and yet I'm watching them and I'm scared for them. I'm thinking, are you okay? Do you need help? You know, blink once for yes and two for no. Do we need to call someone, you know? Anyway, let me know what you think to these YouTube spiritual teachers in the comments below. What are your thoughts? What are your first reactions? And if there's anybody else that you want me to react to, then please stick their name in the comments below. Don't put links and stuff in there though, because YouTube will filter out the links because it thinks they're spam. So just put the name of the person in there and I'll find them and I'll figure it out. And I'll react to them in the next one. I imagine this will be a bit of an ongoing series because I enjoy it and it's a new way to find out, you know, what's going on, what you've been watching that you think's a bit weird and you want to hear another perspective on it, you know. I'm Andy Fellows. I'm here pretty much every Thursday. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. And as I say, if you want to help support the channel, the best way to do that is through Patreon. Otherwise, please be kind and ask good questions, and I'll see you in the next one.